Speaking to our church about where we're at in this transition from lockdown to, our first phase of freedom, and we're still in that transition. I know that we're not really back where we want to be. It's different for different people. Totally understand that. However, we are certainly on the trajectory toward that, and I've been talking about that over the last few weeks. And I guess I wanted to just prepare us for the fallout of that, and how we can lead and find favour post restrictions. And I wanted to go to that story, the story of the Exodus of the Israelites from Egypt, and take us right to the point where they really kind of begin their 40-year journey through the wilderness. As you know, if you're familiar with the story, Moses sent 12 spies into the land, the promised land, to spy it out. 10 came back with a bad report. 2 came back with a good report. It's what you guys brought today, all those good reports. And pardon me, sorry. The result of the people, Israelites, deciding that they couldn't follow God's instructions to take over the promised land meant they'd have to spend 40 years in the wilderness. And so they were 2 years kind of getting themselves organised, getting ready to kind of embark upon that journey. Now, the interesting thing about that's a 2-week hike really from Egypt to the Promised Land, and they were going to be there for 40 years. And so as they begin that journey, I want to take you to Numbers chapter 1, verse 1. It says this, it says, God spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai at the tent of meeting on the first day of the second month in the second year that they'd left Egypt. So they'd been out of Egypt for just 2 years. And God says, number the congregation of the people of Israel by clans and families, writing down the names of every male. You and Aaron are to register company by company every man who is 20 years and older and who is able to fight in the army. Pick one man from each tribe who is the head of his family to help you. And so the book of Numbers begins by quite literally starting to count. And so Numbers, it begins taking account of the people of Israel and actually positioning the people of Israel into their family groups and then assigning them responsibilities so as to maintain the health and the order, the spiritual condition of the nation of Israel. And so after all that was established, which is pretty much the book of Numbers, at the end of chapter 6, we read the following blessing from Numbers 6, verse 24 to 26. And you may be familiar with this blessing. There's been some songs written about it. It says, may the Lord bless you and protect you. May the Lord smile upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord show you his favour and give you his peace. Numbers 6, 24, 26. The priestly blessing, or the Aaron's blessing it's called. So it's actually really critical that in this season of regathering, as we move out of a lockdown world and we move into a post-pandemic world, that we are aware of who is with us. So what God said to Moses and Aaron, count the people. Who's there? So you've made your way out of Egypt. You're moving into a season of freedom. You had an opportunity to move into the promised land. You disobeyed. We are on a journey now, and I think as a church, we are all on a very similar journey, moving toward God's dream and God's destiny for our church. First thing I want you to do, church, is count the people. Who is with you? Who are there? Where do they fit into the life of the church? And I loved Rebecca's good report about new people finding their fit and finding their place to belong and serve in the life of the church. That's going to be absolutely critical as we continue to move forward as a church. And so, where do people fit in the life of the church, and how and where can they lead and serve? And when we can discover that for ourselves, for the people who are a part of the life of our churches, we will see that blessing released over our church. I totally believe it. That's a prophetic blessing for us as a church, that as we count what matters, which is the people who are a part of our church, we know who they are, we know where they are, we know how they can serve and how they can be a part of God's solution and God's rescue plan for humanity. We can see the Lord bless us, protect us, smile upon us, be gracious toward us, show us his favour, and we can find peace as we begin to move into what God's got for us. And so right now, globally, this current season we're in is being coined by a lot of church leaders as the great return. Now, a lot of social commentators are calling this current season globally as the great resignation, because so many people are just changing jobs or quitting their jobs. They've discovered that they don't need to work in the office. They can work from home, or they can start their own business, or they think, why am I doing this job? I've been doing this job for 20 years and I hate it. I've had 2 years off and I've discovered something else that I love more than what I'm currently doing. So there's a huge amount of people in the workforce resigning right around the world. So social commentators have labelled this season the great resignation. But in church world, a lot of church leaders are calling this current season the great return, where people are coming back into the life of the church. However, in step with that, they're also experiencing what's being coined as the great realization. So while we're seeing the church, people like the church return face-to-face in face-to-face gatherings, we're also realizing who will not be returning as we thought they would. Or people return, but we realize they're very different people. Because the people that we were, and you might not realize this about yourself, but the person that you were in November 2019 is probably not the person you are in, where are we now? November 2021. I can tell you where I was. This time in 2019, what's the date today? The 15th of November. Maybe it wasn't quite this early in the month, Rachel, but do you know what the date was that we were away in November?
I've got a feeling we may have arrived back from where you're about to say on the 15th of November and then gone straight to a Hunter regional event that evening.
Great segue. So I can tell you I'm not the same person I was in 2019 as I am today. Many aren't. In 2019, as Rachel said, we were coming back from a trip to Thailand. We'd been to Thailand for 10 nights or something, 11 nights, something like that. And how many nights was it? 9 nights, 5, 6, 7, 8 nights. Yeah, it felt like a month. 8 nights. Because that's important to know. And so at the time, I remember still taking so long to kind of unwind and wind down from work life. And when I was there, I enjoyed it. But again, as re-entering, as Rachel said, the next day that we got back from Thailand, we went straight into a Hunter regional event, and it was pretty full on. And so that person that I was in 2019, I'm not that same person today. I really wasn't looking forward to the Thailand holiday. I knew it was coming, and I couldn't. I was pleased that it was there, but I wasn't necessarily counting down the days. I was just engrossed in work. However, this year, we've actually booked another holiday that's coming up in 17 days, and it is to Fiji, and we're staying for 7 nights. And so why am I telling you this story? Because I'm different now than what I was in 2019. I was probably a bit of a workaholic. I was a bit obsessive. I thought that I was being a hero or a champion because I wasn't looking forward to holidays. I used to tell people that the only reason I took holidays is because Rachel made me. But now, move forward 2 years, I cannot wait for this holiday, and I have been counting down the days. And I do think about work, but I'm not obsessive about it. And I do know that I need a holiday, and I'm thankful that as a family we prioritise them and take them. So things have changed and people have changed, and that's not just me. That's the case for a lot of people. Things are different now than they were in November 2019. So this is the great return, but also the great realisation. We are different people. And so in this world that we're in, which is a post-crisis world, it's a post-pandemic world, in the current climate, in a post-crisis climate, there are some things that are important for us to take note of and take stock of. And this is what Aaron and Moses knew. And it's not just post-pandemic, it's post-crisis. So Moses and Aaron in Egypt were post-crisis. They had hopes and dreams to accomplish a settlement in a promised land that would totally bless and just there'd be a perfect conclusion to their journey through the promised land. But that didn't eventuate immediately, and so they had to manage something that they never thought they'd had to manage before. It can be a church split. It could be the sudden exit of leadership. Church pastors might just get up and leave one day. It could be financial mismanagement. It could be immorality, where a key team member or somebody falls because of an immoral decision they've made. Whatever it is, post-crisis, there are some keys in this story that I just want to point us to as we lead our church in this current climate, moving out of lockdown into our new season. One thing that they did, Aaron and Moses, and was a directive from God, was focus on the team who were with them. And as a church, we have to focus on the team who are with us. We can't live in discouragement, because those people who are still in our teams after this crisis, they're all in people. It's never been easier to not have to be in church, because it's a valid reason to say, oh, look, I'm just not comfortable being around crowds anymore. I'm just not comfortable mixing with other people. I'm just not sure if my kids should be in that environment. Now, these are valid reasons, and it's never been easy for people just to be at home. And now we have an online expression and service so they can just engage in that space. It's never been easier to not be in the room, but here's the good news, that the people who are with you, Rebecca, with the Robert and the Richard and the Zoe, and with Sam and your team in Toronto, and with Rach and I and our team in Cessnock, if they're in the room, guess what? They are all in. So as leaders, we cannot afford to be discouraged about who is not with us. Count who's there. Count them all, every single person who is with you, and be inspirational with the people who are with you. Lead them. Help them to be engaged, because they want to be engaged. They don't have to be there. The only reason they're there is because they're like you. They want to be on mission, and they want to serve a cause and a purpose greater than themselves. So as leaders, we have to be on mission, and people want to be discipled. They want to grow. They want to deepen their relationship with Jesus. And that's our responsibility, to point people and lead people and disciple people in that journey. So let's be encouragers, and let's celebrate the people who are in the room with us, because they are the people who are doing the work of the ministry. They're the ones who are outworking God's call upon their life for the sake of our world. So let's champion them. Let's celebrate them. Let's focus on the team who we have. Let's make sure we know who they are, and that they know that we are grateful that they are there with us. So focus on who are with you. Secondly, the second thing Moses and Aaron did is that they turned the remaining crowd into the core. And there was a remaining crowd, and if you go back a few weeks, you'll see that a rabble left Egypt with the Israelites, because momentum attracts, and they brought a rabble with them, and they had a ragtag group of people there in the desert, in the wilderness, but they were able to turn that remaining crowd into a core. And the church will still have people connected who may not necessarily be all in, but they are looking for their next step. They're looking to grow. They're looking to be a part of something. They're looking to belong. And they're with us because God, and Rachel mentioned this before, we had 7 first-time guests in our Cessnock AM service on Sunday. And this is good news. And to be honest, it's probably one of the biggest first-time guests weekends we have had over the last 2 weeks. In fact, across all of our locations, it's probably one of the biggest first-time guest weekends we've had pre-pandemic. It's a lot of people just looking for their next step. A lot of people looking to see what God's got for them, and God has moved heaven and earth to bring them to you. For people to just turn up, to people to ring the church out of the blue and say, "Hey, I want to come to church. When can I be there?" Like we have got it incumbent upon us to be the leaders that help to turn the remaining crowd, those people who are still looking to connect, into the core, help them to grow into all that God has for them. So let's keep helping people take their next step. Let's keep helping people join with us in their journey toward what Jesus has for them. And that's what Moses and Aaron did. They were able to count who was there. They were able to find them a place to fit, identify where they belong, and give them tasks. Numbers goes on to talk about the different tribes and the different roles and responsibilities each tribe had. And so that's kind of what we're doing. We're identifying the different kinds of people. So, you'd be a great, on platform. Hey, you'd be great in hospitality. Hey, you'd be great serving in this tech area. Hey, you'd be great with pastoral care. Hey, and this is still the church. This is still what we do. And in this post-pandemic world, this is something that's going to be absolutely critical, because people who are here with you, they want to be a part of the solution. Third and finally, what I can see Moses and Aaron doing there in that story is they embraced, the inevitability of the work ahead. And so part of the intentionality behind the organisation of the tribes of Israel, the laws, the cultural expectations that Moses and Aaron were bringing all the ceremonial liturgy that they wanted them to adhere to, was the fact that Moses and Aaron, they're actually staring down the barrel of 40 years of an ordeal of a journey through a dry wilderness. And they knew that they had to embrace the inevitability of the work ahead. They were planning for something significant, a journey to bring a nation into their destiny. And it could have just been a 2-week hike, but God said, no, we're going to make you face 40 years of wilderness experience. And so despite the crisis, which is where they found themselves in, despite the loss, which I know many of us would be feeling in this current season, and despite the delay, because how quickly could it have been? I mean, I 2 years, it feels like sometimes the 2 years of this pandemic have been wasted. There's been a delay that we should have been where we are today 2 years ago. But, God doesn't see it that way. And our Bible plan today really unpacked that so beautifully. And if you haven't read that yet, jump into that and read that today. It was such an encouragement about what God does in our waiting season, in the delay. And so they organised the troops. They knew they had a big journey ahead of them. They knew there was an inevitability of work. So they organised the teams, they organised the troops, and guess what? They started walking. I mean, I don't know how they did it, to be honest, but they started. They just did what God had called them to, and they began to move the people of God.